Our station.
Good morning and welcome to the Skinny for Friday, June 19th. Happy Juneteenth. I'm Mitch Perry, the senior political reporter for the Florida Phoenix, with my colleague, co-host Ray Rowe, editor-in-chief of Creative Loafing newspaper. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Mitch. How's it going?
It's going well. I want to make sure we've got our guest on. Maria, are you there? You're out there right now.
I am.
Okay.
I am. Good morning.
All right.
guys.
So thanks, Maria. We'll get right back to you in a second. So, Ray, a couple of things I want to say to begin the show here, of course. By the way, one thing, I want to give shout out to a WMNF DJ, okay? Last night I was driving home from this event in Pinellas and listening to 88.5, and I'm hearing all this great music from the early 90s, basically the shoegaze era, if you will, dream pop. Some of my favorite bands of all time, My Bloody Valentine, Lush, Ride, Slow Dive. I mean, really getting deep into it. And it's the show, the Gen X Redux show, right? It's hosted by cool Aunt Cindy is the DJ.
Auntie Cindy, shout out.
Cool. Anyway, so I told her, I wrote her a note because I was so into it. And I said, this is so tremendous. And I don't think she does, shoegaze music that's part of the show. I think it is like 80s and 90s music. It's funny. I listen to a lot of Sirius XM radio, and they have a channel on their channel 33, which is this old school 80s. But anyway, really cool, really fun stuff. Hey, it is Juneteenth, and I want to get into this a little bit before we get into our guest. In fact, we're going to have somebody later in the hour here who's got a show tonight.
That's right.
Looking at an art performance on on Juneteenth.
That's right. We have a guest. They'll be at Tampa Edition tonight. Her first ever solo debut, Melissa Kobe, a Tampa artist, last year became the first black artist to be commissioned to do the official artwork for the U.S. Open.
Okay. Oh, yeah, exactly. That's going to be really exciting to talk to her about that. But yeah, so it is Juneteenth today, and it's really interesting because I got to say something for MNF to give a shout out here because when I came here from California in 2000. WMNF, always a quote-unquote woke station, if you will.
Depends who you ask.
Well,
right?
but MNF in 2000, I did not really know much about Juneteenth in 2000. From California, it was not really observed. Then again, it wasn't observed a lot in the United States until recently. But nevertheless, MNF, it was always a holiday here at the station, 26 years ago, which was incredible. So I got educated.
The parking lot is empty here today.
Yeah, it's a staff. Well, of course, and the thing is, so, again, just for people, just Juneteenth, it marks the day, of course, in 1865, when Union soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas, to announce the end of slavery more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued. Historians estimate that about 500,000 slaves out of a total of basically 4 million liberated themselves by escaping to Union lines between 1863 and the end of the war. The rest remain in slavery. So the vast majority of folks who were free did not have that knowledge of that, which is so significant about this day, such a great American holiday. And the fact was, though, it did not become a federal holiday until 5 years ago, 2021. Joe Biden made it into law. This, of course, comes after the 2020 protest, the George Floyd protests, which were, there's a lot of retrospect looking at that about how that was, negative in some ways. Look, it was the biggest racial moment of racial consciousness, I think, in our lifetimes. You have to go back to the civil rights era of the 60s. To see what we had there. And so that's what led to, America, and looked at this. So there's 33 states who observe this as a state holiday. Florida is not one of them. Maybe that's not surprising, even though we're supposed to be the free state of Florida. And I also want to read you something that Bill Kristol, of all people, Bill Kristol, famous neocon, right, going back to the Iraq War in the 2003 era. He actually worked for George H.W. Bush. Now, of course, he's famous now for being a real never-Trumper. But he wrote something today that I thought was interesting about Juneteenth. He writes that he looked on the White House website this morning to see if there's anything about Juneteenth. He says, I got back no results found, nor that there seemed to be any presidential proclamation this year in honor of its observance. He said the one time the Trump administration seems to have taken notice of Juneteenth was in December of last year when the administration removed Juneteenth and Martin Luther King Jr. holiday from the National Parks Service's list of free admission days, replacing it with June 14th Flag Day, which is not an official federal holiday, but it is President Trump's birthday. And that is a holiday he wishes all of us to celebrate, which, of course, we all know what happened last Sunday at the cage match out there. But again, reading from Crystal this morning, he writes, one understands why Trump is choosing to neglect Juneteenth. After all, Trump's vice president claimed earlier this week at a campaign event in New York that, quote, they've become anti-white in the Democratic Party. Crystal writes, if you're appealing to those who think one of our two major parties is, quote, anti-white, if you're trying to convince Americans that anti-whiteness is a great problem, if you're the party that wants to foster and exploit white grievance, then you have little interest in calling attention to a holiday that is a reminder of the terrible injustices caused by fantasies of white supremacy. Again, this is from William Crystal. I just thought that was really interesting to read that this morning. Anyway, so, okay, with that all said, now we're going to get into, we're going to keep, as our listeners know, we had Brandy Gabbard on last week. There's a big election, okay? Let's bring this up again. We're basically less than 2 months away now from the St. Petersburg municipal election, August 18th, excuse me. That's the day of, course, the primary throughout the state of Florida. And locally here, we've got a mayoral election. We've got 6 candidates in the race, city council races, a couple of those as well. We've had, so far, we've had on Kevin Batdorf, and we've had on Brandy Gabbard. And our third guest now, third candidate, is going to be on here joining us via Zoom, and that's Maria Scruggs. Maria, welcome to The Skinny.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Mitch. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, great to talk to you. Of course, you are a former president of the St. Petersburg branch of the NAACP and a longtime community activist. And you've run for a local office several times, we should tell the listeners, including back in 2001. I remember that, my second year here in the Tampa Bay area, when, of course, that was Rick Baker who won that. That was a very crowded 9-person field then. I remember that campaign. So a lot's changed in the last quarter century, but here you are again. And so first question, why do you want to lead the city of St. Petersburg?
Well, St. Petersburg, as beautiful a city as it is, Mitch, is on an affordability crisis. And the current administration just simply is not addressing that. We have symbolic awards and proclamations and, different groups getting a piece of money here or a piece of grant here. But as a city, we're not addressing one of the biggest quality of life issues in this city, which is people just simply can't afford to live in St. Petersburg. As you probably know, I was the only candidate to qualify by petition. And I said to my campaign team at the beginning of this process 6 months ago, because I was the first one to file, is that we've got to hit the streets running. We've got to meet the people. We've got to understand the needs of the people, which is why the People Over Politics campaign. And what we found overwhelmingly is people struggling with the ability to live here. And we keep hearing affordable housing. And last night, as I said in the candidate forum, affordable for whom? And that's because we're not addressing the issue. People just simply don't have enough income coming in, and there's nobody talking about how to resolve that issue. So that's my number one issue. And of course, there's a litany of others relating to lack of accountability, lack of transparency. I'm a public administrator, and it just drives me nuts.
Okay, so I think people want to. I want to know certainly, and people know, who is Maria Scruggs? She never held office. Now I know that for the last 19 years, you've worked with the Orange County Corrections Department, and I find that fascinating, Maria, because for one thing, how the heck did you commute every day from St. Petersburg to Orlando? Okay, let's just start there. My God, what were your days like?
Do you fly one of those Uber helicopters or something? What's going on?
Well, it's been a blessing. It's been a blessing to have my paycheck come from Orange County and my politics remain in Pinellas County.
Wow.
Because what I learned very early on, the two don't mix. So I've enjoyed the ride here, and I have commuted for 1,500 miles for 19, as you say, it's correctly stated, for 19 years. And what COVID did, as horrible as an ordeal that was for all of us, it certainly taught me how to perfect handling business on the road and remaining safe, because it's always important, safety first. But it really has been a fun ride in many ways, and it has kept me in my career of choice, which is the criminal justice system.
Right.
And
So let me ask you, what was your position actually with the corrections department? What did you actually do there?
I am the administrator responsible for four different areas: pretrial release supervision, pretrial diversion, drug testing, and the training and support unit for community corrections.
Okay, and again, if you're just tuning in right now, we're speaking with Maria Scruggs. She's one of the candidates running for mayor of St. Petersburg.
Maria, let me ask you something. Obviously, you're first to qualify, first to file as well. I want to ask you a question about that later. But going back to affordability, obviously, that's what everybody's going to be talking about. In every mayoral, municipal, state house race, if you talk to Ken Welch, he'll tell you he's working with Habitat for Humanity. He'll say we've adopted the YIGB provision to help churches develop. And he, like so many others, is touting this 80% of AMI out there. The word affordability is going to come up, but there's not a lot of specifics. Can you kind of dive into what you can do as a mayor, what a city hall can do to actually do something about affordability in a world where developers say we can't build if we don't get this tax cut, or if it's not 80% AMI?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that you have to start with, number one, what is in your control when there is a major when there's a major issue. This is a major issue that the mayor on its own cannot solve. But one of the greatest powers that the mayor has is the power to convene. And one of the things I talk about a lot in this business as an administrator, you learn how to collaborate along the lines of addressing systemic issues. I want to and will do is convene representatives from the private industry, representatives from the public sector, representatives from nonprofit leadership, and say, look, and representatives from regional organizations as well, and ask the question, can we come to consensus on what a livable wage is in our city? And if we can come to consensus on that, what is it we have to do, and how can the city support that? But we're not even having the discussion. We are throwing around this AMI, but it still is not we hear that. We hear the affordability discussion about housing, but I'm telling you, when I'm talking to people on the north side, south side, west side of St. Pete, I'm hearing people say they can't afford to live here. And one of the things that was very interesting, I spoke to last night at the candidate forum, I attended the dedication for 3 Habitat townhomes in South St. Petersburg. All of the individuals that were participating in Habitat housing, or, through the Habitat program, they were all professionals. They were not low income, single. Well, I think one was a single parent, but for the most part, they all had really good jobs, but they had to rely on a program like Habitat in order to purchase their first home in St. Petersburg.
Right.
And I think that speaks to the fact that and what we really speak to when we speak to affordable housing in St. Petersburg, in my humble opinion, we speak to how do we keep putting the money in the hands of developers versus how do we address the real issues that the people are facing.
If you're just tuning in right now, it's 11:20. You're listening to The Skinny here on WMNF. Mitch Perry with Ray Rowe. We're speaking with Maria Scruggs, one of the candidates running for mayor of St. Petersburg in the August 18th election. Now, you mentioned, I watched most of the debate last night, streamed that, the League of Women Voters debate in St. Petersburg. We've also had the one last week, the NAACP event. Mayor Ken Welch is definitely getting hammered a lot for his handling of the hurricanes. And I want to read something to you. Mayor Welch isn't here, and
he's been invited.
He's been
so
invited.
Is Charlie Crist.
Yes, absolutely. But he doesn't need to have somebody speaking up for him. But I'm going to say this just for the point of conversation, Maria, to hear your response. So yesterday I was reading Pinellas County Commissioner Renee Flowers, who we know is a very big Ken Welch supporter, and this is what she said about all this criticism coming Ken Welch's way about handling Helene and Milton. She wrote, quote, "I find it mind-blowing that a city with an over 100-year-old infrastructure is the sole responsibility of the mayor of the last 4 years. Actually, it's 5 years. But she says, for the time I served, back when Renee was on the city council, she said repairs and upgrades to the stormwater sewer system were pushed back because the money just wasn't there. The water treatment plant at Albert Whitted was shut down, so that added to the operations of the other systems. That was done under Rick Baker." She goes on to say the community went crazy and was very upset at that decision. Deep well injection and reclaimed water has been an issue since Mayor Fisher. When you make a decision, you have one side mad and one side glad. You're going to take a hit either way, but better take the hit for what's right for the majority than to make a decision so that you can be popular for a season. She says, "I'm not shifting blame. I'm sharing facts." What do you say to that when it comes to Ken Welch and his handling of the hurricanes?
I think one of the things that was unfortunate is that I think one of the primary issues about Mayor Welch's handling of the hurricanes was certainly he was not responsible. And he was certainly not responsible and inherited the issues that had occurred with our infrastructure. Where I found fault with Mayor Welch, and I sent Mayor Welch a text. I said, look, I know this is overwhelming, something to that nature. I'm willing to volunteer to coordinate the response in South St. Petersburg because of the depth of devastation that people were facing, and just in a state of shock. I knew what the response time was going to be with city. I'm thinking, as a recognizable face, let me be the person helping to coordinate this. He said, in other words, thank you, I'll think about it, but I don't like the way you talk to my staff on some issue, on an issue. I thought, he's got to be kidding me. And of course, I never heard from that. And of course, we had pals that stayed forever. Of course, I had people stopping me in J.C. Penney's. Hey, I'm hoping you're running for mayor because this guy has got to go. He's just not listening. That's been the consistent concern with this mayor, is his accessibility and his lack of interest in meeting with and just talking with people until it's election time. And it has and it's so overt that it's mind-boggling to me. And I'm of course not surprised that Renee Flowers, I mean, one of the things and one of the travesties of both her leadership and Mayor Welch's leadership is they have been afforded a lot of benefits with very little results or receipts. So they tend to cover each other and support each other. And I think that's one of the major issues that the people are just over. All of the fanfare with no receipts attached to it.
Maria, I want to ask you about the NAACP debate. I remember when I saw Mitch that Friday after, he was really impressed by that debate and everybody's performance, especially yours. I know Valerie Smith, our reporter at Creative Loafing Tampa Bay, responded and reported on a question about the 287G agreements. You were the only candidate that said you would direct the St. Pete police to disband that 287G agreement, of course, saying that the local police would cooperate with federal immigration authorities. You said that Ken Welch should have known better. You are a jail administrator, obviously, so you know a lot about those agreements. And then you said something about you having a conversation with him where he laid out his rationale. And you said, I remember thinking this is political. Again, Ken Welch has been invited to this show numerous times to come talk. Could you talk about a little bit about that conversation and why you think it would be prudent and wise to actually reject this agreement coming from a municipal standpoint, considering all the retaliation that's coming from Tallahassee right now? Absolutely.
And let me correct something. The conversation was not with Mayor Welch. The
Okay.
conversation was with Chief Holloway.
Okay.
When we entered into the agreement, and my question to him was simply this: why are we doing this? And again, you know, I give people respect in the positions that they hold. And he went on to, you know, explain the limited role that St. Pete PD would have. Yeah, I know that, but given what is happening on the national scene with ICE, why are we buying into a political, excuse me, sir, why are we buying into this when we really do not have to do this? And it was shocking to me that Chief Holloway somehow felt that this was a mandate from the governor's office. And when I heard Mayor Welch on the stage, I think he uttered something about it was a mandate from the governor. I was shocked. And then after I had an opportunity to think about it, I'm like, Maria, why are you shocked? This is one of the reasons you're running for mayor. This is somebody who has, I don't expect the mayor to know everything. I'll be the first to say there's just going to be areas that you're not going to be as astute on. That's why it's important for you to surround yourself with the administrators who are going to be honest with you and who've done their work. And what it was clear to me, if they had done their work, they either misread the statute or didn't understand the language, but I doubt that. What I truly believe was that they were acquiescing to the request of Sheriff Gualtieri.
And quite, you know, that is a very good probably deduction out of that. I will say this too, by the way, Ray, you know,
you have reported extensively on this the whole way.
And of course, Creative Loafing wrote a story about this after the debate saying Mayor Welch got it wrong. Now, what I did find interesting is, you know, on the comment section, because there's a lot of people, now again, the mayor, the chief should know better, but a lot of the public is confused about this. Sure. And the reason they're confused is because what's happened is, and we saw this most recently with Mayor Jane Castor here in Tampa about a couple months ago, is that it absolutely is not law that the municipalities have to go into a 287G agreement. Counties do, municipalities do not. However, what has happened is when municipalities have looked at that agreement, have talked about maybe getting out of it, like the city of Key West did last year, or if the agreement is such that the mayor, the way Tampa did it, was that it didn't approve, you know, James Othmeyer, Attorney General, didn't approve of it. Then they go back and they start saying those are, quote, sanctuary policies. Now, sanctuary cities are illegal in Florida in 2019. See, it's like a catch-22. So, you know, if you don't do it this way, they'll try to go after you this way. But I saw people commenting on her story and saying Creative Loafing got it wrong. No, readers, you do not know what you're talking about, because in fact, the municipalities do not have to do it. But I get it. I get it's confusing because the state comes down, and it's not DeSantis, but it's the Attorney General.
In fact, the St. Petersburg Police's legal department said they would not comment specifically on what part of the state statute they interpreted.
Well, that was that was really weird in your article there, because the bottom line is, in fact, I talked to the St. Pete police folks last year. There was a rally. Some of the folks, activists in St. Pete, did a big thing. Months, you know, again, this agreement has been in place. I think St. Pete did this like last spring, well over a year ago. Same thing with Tampa. It was not covered at all at the time because they basically did it behind closed doors because they were allowed to do that. Basically, it didn't have to be a public meeting about that. Again, counties were forced to do it. Anyway, don't want to get too hung up on that.
Yeah, we could do a whole other show.
But
on
I
this,
just
Maria.
think that was something that came out of that debate. Again, right now it's almost 11:30, 11:29 right now. You're listening to Skinny here on WMNF 88.5 FM. Mitch Perry with Ray Roa. We're talking to Maria Scruggs. She is a mayoral candidate for St. Petersburg's job. Ken Welch, after 5 years on the job there, is up for re-election in this August, actually. And of course, the top two, whoever does not get 50%, the top two candidates will move on to the election in November. And Maria Scruggs, on the issue of transparency, you talked last week at the NAACP forum. You said when it comes to procurement, you give the city of St. Petersburg an F grade, and I believe you have filed it with a complaint with the Ethics Commission on that. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Tell us more.
That is accurate. What month is this? June. This is June. Last February, the city issued an RFP for STEM services in St. Petersburg. To my surprise, the process resulted in a vendor out of Tampa getting receiving the grant award of $750,000 for STEM. And of course, what happens to me a lot of times is something goes ding, ding, ding. Why would we be paying a vendor in Tampa to do STEM when we have so many STEM programs in St. Petersburg? And so I do what I do. I did a public records request, and sure enough, received the email traffic requested the email traffic of the staff person, Sharon Brown, who was responsible for coordinating this RFP procurement process, and realized that she had been in communication with this provider over in Tampa for months, starting back in October of 2025, so much so that she was introducing her to others to get her set up in Tampa. Then February, the RFP is released, and interestingly enough, that's who's awarded the grant award. And I thought, guys, this, and of course, one of the things that has become well known in St. Petersburg is that it clearly is a culture of pay to play. Even if there's a procurement process, it's skewed because it's already a decision made. As you know, when ARC submitted its unsolicited report or proposal, for the redevelopment of the historic gas plant, all of a sudden you saw the mayor standing up proudly, promoting how wonderful ARC and this Ellison group was. And I thought, is he? I think what has happened, the mayor has not connected the fact that he's no longer a member of a 6-member legislative body. He is now the CEO of a city where the buck starts and stops with him. When you talk about the unsolicited proposals, where now the developers are leading the development of the gas plant area, when you talk about the $250,000 worth of bonuses that went to his senior staff, which again blew my mind, because as the news is coming over my phone, I'm texting the city council people and I said, folks, you can't do that. Mm-hmm. And I shared with them a formal opinion by Attorney General Bob Butterworth, who had issued a ruling on the exact issue. And again, I'm sitting at that candidate forum and listening to Mayor Welch saying the only mistake that he could think of that he had made was that he issued the bonuses before the deal was sealed, but he stood by what he had done. And I don't have a poker face. And I remember sitting there thinking, I don't think he's getting that. He's not making the connection to the accountability and the transparency and the fact that he does not carry the city's checkbook as his personal checkbook. But that's how he operates, and the amount of exposure is 10 times that as a county commissioner. And I just think that he has not made that transition. I knew that was my concern going in, and when after about the third or fourth year, and people start talking to me about running for mayor, my first response was, Nope, I'm retiring, and that'll be the end of my public service. And of course, I go back to who I go to always, and that was God, and prayed about it. And here I am. But I think the biggest issue with the procurement piece for me is that the appearance that, and well, it's for me, it's not even the appearance, it's the reality. And I have found the formal complaint with the Ethics Commission on this particular procurement process. Which the mayor touted. I think he touted it last night as a win when it really isn't. And one of the comebacks that he will have on this complaint is that the local vendors did not apply. And my comeback to that is, well, if the staff person was having conversations with the vendor that won the award in Tampa in October, why could she have not been having that same conversation with vendors in St. Petersburg?
All right.
Letting them know or giving them a heads up that this was going to come forward. And so these are just on the surface, some of the issues that are just blowing me away.
Maria, we only have a few more minutes left with you, but I have several more questions, so maybe we can just kind of go through this a little quicker here. A couple of things here.
Okay.
Last night it was mentioned in the debate about how St. Petersburg is not a safe area for pedestrians, and I think you were surprised by that. Now, there is this new report that just came out by Smart Growth America and the National Complete Streets Coalition that says that Tampa St. Pete is the 8th most dangerous area in the nation when it comes to pedestrian safety and safety for cyclists. As mayor, what would you do to try to improve that?
Well, one of the things I want to do is get the facts. And like you said, I was surprised that, of course, I'm aware that there are definitely pedestrian incidents of pedestrian fatalities and injuries and that thing. What I was not aware of was the degree.
Okay.
And so first thing for me is I want to understand the facts. I want the numbers. And then from there, talk about how do we address this issue? Because one of the things that often happens, we talked about, and I think the mayor talked about the complete streets and Gabbard talked about the complete streets. And we put a lot of money into these initiatives, but then we still have the problem. So my thing is, the first thing I need to get up to snuff on is understanding the depth of the issue and ensuring that it is as widespread, and then develop a public safety plan as well as a development plan that could help resolve the issue. That's one of the differences that I try to distinguish on is let's get the problem solved. If it really is to this degree, let's move past the political pandering and let's talk about what the real solutions are. And that's what my focus is as mayor of St. Petersburg, is a real solution that we can give to the people.
We know that you support the Dump Duke effort, right? To get to have a study, which the city council agreed on a couple weeks ago, to look at getting rid of Duke Energy Florida and doing energy municipality energy themselves. Now, some critics would say that look what the problem the city is having with these exorbitant water bills right now, and so how can you expect them to handle a complete energy system here in St. Petersburg when we're having such a difficult situation with not making sure to get the proper billing in terms of the usage for people on their water bills? What do you say to people who say the city can't handle that energy? Taking their own bill.
I do believe 100% that the city under its current leadership could not handle that, because that's what speaks to that is the fact that we're even having the discussion 1 year before the agreement is scheduled to expire. And I remember when it came up and us following Clearwater, and I'm thinking, why are we just addressing this issue? This is huge. So I would agree with critics that the current administration certainly is not equipped. That's why we need a new mayor who understands the way to get to these complex issues and the way to hold your people who are making the $200,000, the $100,000 salaries, so that they are addressing these issues in real time and not the political eyes that we tend to look to all these problems through.
Last question for you, and that is, again, this is a question that was asked of all the candidates last week of the NAACP forum, and I think other than Mayor Welch, you mentioned what he said was his bad issue, but the candidates were asked if there was a mistake you had made in the last 10 years, basically, and there's something that you've done that if you're thinking of over it, that you would do it a little differently. I know you were surprised with that question last week, but having had some time to think about it over the last week, do you have a response to that?
I do, Mitch, and I tell you the context of which I saw that answer, because as a human, I make mistakes every day.
Sure.
It's just that I don't capitalize or they're not memorialized in my head because I'm not a public official with that type of high profile. So as I make mistakes, I own them. And I'll tell people, I'll say on social media all the time, if I'm wrong, if I make a mistake, please come back and tell me, because when I'm a public official, I have to own it publicly and then fix it. But I have had time to think about it. And I'm thinking, yes, I have made mistakes as a parent. I've made mistakes as an administrator. I've put some people over things that maybe shouldn't have. But I did not see that answer as something that I would make a mistake on a day-to-day. I thought that it was something that would have had a public impact. For example, in my role as the former NAACP president, did I take a stand on something that I probably shouldn't? And that was where I focused. And I ran back everything in my head, and there was nothing to that magnitude that I could go back and that the public would understand, yep, she screwed up on that. And then I offered to fix it. And here we are a week later, and I still haven't been able to come up with anything in that context. But in general, oh my God, I make mistakes all the time.
Sure. Well, Maria Scruggs, we really appreciate you coming on The Skinny this morning. With best of luck to you in the August 18th mayoral primary in St. Petersburg.
Thank you so much, Mitch, for having me, guys. Enjoyed you.
All right. I want to remind people the registration deadline for that August 18th primary is July 20th in Pinellas County. You can start to mail ballot, make a request for that on August 6th, and early voting starts on August 8th, according to Julie Marcus.
Yes, indeed. Supervisor elections in Pinellas County. Okay, we're going to pivot now, Ray.
Yeah, for sure.
We've got a guest in studio here.
You know, it's Frederick Douglass. I think it was, what was the year? 1582, maybe. He said, what to a slave is the 4th of July? And as you mentioned at the top of the show, Juneteenth, this holiday that commemorates the emancipation of enslaved people in the United States, going back to Texas here. We're very close to this moment here in the South, and I'll dare to say we're pretty good at celebrating it in Tampa, increasingly so. And tonight there's a big celebration in Water Street. We can't talk about prices, but one of our reporters at Creative Loafing Tampa Bay, Annalise Mabe, spoke with Melissa Kobe, a Tampa artist. She will have her solo debut tonight at the Tampa edition. There are 14 new pieces in there. It's a very accessible show. You can read about how accessible it is at cltampabay.com. But we're joined in the studio by Creative Loafing reporter Annalise Mabe and Melissa Kobe. Thank you so much to you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Great, and we're going to have you close out the show with us here. Annalise, I want to kind of start with you. You pitched this story to us. I love when I get pitches from Annalise, and I'm curious, what was it that drew you to Melissa's art and to this story?
Well, Melissa first started going viral on Instagram a couple years back during the quarantine. She started illustrating, and her illustrations started going pretty viral pretty quickly, pretty organically, gaining a lot of traction. And I've been impressed by, this Tampa artist who's really just become quite prolific in the last 6 years. Tonight is her first solo show. She's evolved from illustrations to these really bright, beautiful, intricate, delicately cut and layered paper pieces that are big, and you'll see them tonight, and you can look them up online, and maybe Melissa can talk a little bit more about how these look in detail as well. But just the colors and the energy there, and yeah, that's kind of what drew me to her work.
Yeah, and after this question, I'd love to pass the mic to you and let you drive this here. But Melissa, you told Annalise that this is the most pivotal point of your career. Obviously, the first solo is a huge deal. This is new work.
Yes.
You had to push yourself to do this work. And then you said, it's especially important because my goal as an artist is to represent people, especially Black people, especially Black women. There are prominent Black female artists in the Bay Area. Y'all afford, I think of all the time when I jog through that development there in West River. But Black women have always existed in town, and they're everywhere. We talk about the Fortune Street Bridge and things like that. Can you talk about this moment for you and what it means to be a Black woman showcasing a very nice show on top of a building in a part of town that really didn't have a lot of people, and then some people would say could be more diverse? I don't know. What do you think about that?
That's exactly it. It's pivotal to me because, a lot of the work that I do, it's online. I get recognition from seeing people or from people seeing my work online. And for every opportunity that I've gotten, it's actually been mostly outside of the Tampa area. And you're right. When you think of the Edition Hotel, I don't think of it as being a space.
It is a diverse place.
It's a diverse space, but I don't think of it as a space that would have come. I wouldn't have thought of it as a space that would have asked me to be a part of their event. So to have my first solo show being in such a beautiful, like, wonderful hotel that I haven't even stayed at
That's
before.
in South Tampa, right?
It sounds great.
It's in Water Street,
It's in
Tampa.
Water Street,
And I will
Tampa,
say
yes.
Ryan Brown is the local curator
Yes.
of the culture there, and his boss is Frank Roberts, both men of melanation, if that's a word.
Yes.
So the hotel does, it has that vibe there, but we don't traditionally think of it
Right.
as that place, at least that neighborhood.
That's exactly right. And thank you so much to Ryan for reaching out to me to ask to be a part of this show. It's my first solo show, and I've never done anything of this magnitude. My work has traditionally been smaller or digital, and I've never been represented or had a chance to represent myself in this arena. So I'm excited. I'm nervous. I'm excited to become a part of more entrenched in the Tampa community. That's really important to me.
Yeah, and Annalise, I know we only gave you like 1,000 words, so I know you have more questions that didn't make it into this story.
Yeah, well, I had a great time speaking with you, Melissa.
It was really nice talking to you too.
And I'm glad we could be here to talk a little bit more. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the recent opportunity that you had. You became the first Black artist, theme artist for the U.S. Open, and this was just last year, 2025, as they celebrated their 75th anniversary.
And sorry, I don't interrupt. The U.S. Women's Tennis Open, we should say, because there's a U.S. Men's Golf going on this weekend. So
Okay.
Yes,
emphasize
tennis.
Last year in New York City.
Honoring the legacy of Althea Gibson. So I just wanted to ask you what that experience was like for you. And that seems like another pivotal and like really historic moment.
It was probably it was the biggest opportunity of my life, because you talk about spaces that were like I've never seen myself in. That was also one of them. Like, I grew up and used to have my cousins go to the U.S. Opens, and I'd never thought that I'd be able to even attend as a guest. But to be asked to be the first Black woman or Black artist to illustrate for the first Black female to step onto the U.S. Open tennis court and go on to win, it was historic. It was major, and it's really just like put my life on this wonderful and humbling trajectory that has led me to this space here. So.
Yeah, can I ask a question of Melissa?
Sure.
Again, and we should tell our listeners, this is artist Melissa Kobe, right? He's got this event tonight.
Yep, it's a solo debut over at the Tampa Edition in Water Street, Tampa.
So I saw a photo with you with Billie Jean King, actually, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That was amazing. Funny story. When she walked into the studio that we were supposed to meet at, she walks in. She's wearing my art on her back.
Oh my God.
But she doesn't see me standing there, so she's walking through and she's like showing off this jacket with my artwork on the back, and she walks right by me, and I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? So her team had to tell her, hey, there's Melissa right there. And she came, she embraced me. It was warm, it was wonderful. She talked to me like a real person, but to like meet the tennis greats and have her in this very human sense. Oh,
And just a
amazing.
humanitarian great. I mean, she's
Yes,
such a great civil rights activist and all that, and on for gay rights and so many great things she has
Yes.
done over the course of her great life. Yeah, so
She's championed for Arthur Ashe, for Bill,
Right.
and she's hero,
Yeah.
icon.
And also in the story and in the interview, you mentioned something really important, and you said that everyone deserves softness and joy. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about that. On a historic day of liberation like Juneteenth, how does choosing to create with joy and whimsy feel like an act of true freedom for both you in the process while you're making the art, and hopefully, in the art that comes out of it?
I think of it just as an act of joy, an act of resistance, because I think, especially for me, and I think a lot of women of color, especially Black women, they tend to struggle against presenting as strong, and like you hear terms like strong, resilient Black female, but we're also soft, we're also feminine, we also deserve leisure and joy. And for me to even step out of the space of trying to create these illustrations where I started from, which I used to create to process trauma, I had to step away from that, and I had to start creating and do what makes me feel good. And I want my art to be representative of that. I want my art to showcase joy. I want people to look at it to feel a sense of joy, and not necessarily to feel like weight and depth of the world. The world is heavy enough as it is. It's okay to just create beautiful things that make people feel good.
Yeah.
I want to do that.
And I'm curious too, I know that you're a mom, and as a mom, I wonder if your process has changed since becoming a mom. Like, has there been a level of depth or another layer that's that's kind of changed along with you?
Can you tell us about your kids a little bit?
Yeah, of course. Oh my God, don't say less. So I have twin boys. I have 4-year-old boys that are just beautiful, high energy, just the smartest kids ever. And as far as how my art has changed, I've come to appreciate it more because now I have to create and make time to create the art and like separate those two identities, motherhood and art. It's now separate. I used to just work into the night before kids, like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. That's me grinding. But now I have to like be intentional about how I create, when I create, trying to include my kids in the things that I'm creating and having them like look at my art and be like, oh, are you creating that for, the other day my son was like, is that for Cadillac? Because I did a deal with Cadillac. He's like, is that another Cadillac thing? I'm like, you remembered. And just have them like look at my work and say, oh, that's nice. That's pretty. I do it for them now.
Wow.
And tonight you have 14 new pieces. This is your first ever solo show up at Arts Club, 8 to 11 at the Edition. Have you previewed this space? And if you did, what was it like to see some of your art on the walls for the first time? How was your reaction physically, emotionally?
So I have not seen the work as it's intended to live. I was there for like the setup process, but to just like stand in this room knowing that there are going to be so many people there who are coming to hopefully appreciate and just celebrate with me in this moment. I'm overwhelmed. You can hear my voice right now.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with the Arts Club, if you've been down to Water Street, wandered into the Tampa Edition lobby because of the wonderful smell coming out of it,
so delicious.
and you see people coming up this staircase, and you kind of end up in the Arts Club there. And I'm sure some people will find their way outside, but it is a very intimate space.
It is intimate.
Back there.
Yeah, and just for anyone listening who may be driving in their car right now, wondering if they should come out to your free show tonight, what is your personal invitation to them? Like, what kind of energy might they expect when they step through those doors?
Just that warm, intimate gathering. Come meet me. I'm super chill. I'm super awkward in person. Like I love talking to people. An introvert. I'm very introverted, but I will turn it on. I love to meet people. I love to have conversations with them, especially about art. And I do like that it's not a larger gathering. It's very intimate. It's very small. Mm-hmm. We get to have conversation and human connection, which is something that I strive for. So if you're able to, please do come on out.
Yep. And tonight, I think some of the proceeds are going to the Black Art Gala Foundation.
Yes. So some of the proceeds for the night, especially with the drinks and such, they will go towards the Black Art Gala Foundation. It's a nonprofit organization that strives to preserve art, and they just honor and recognize the achievements of Black artists in the Tampa Bay area, and they just seek to provide visibility for them through their many programs. And I would love for you guys to come out and just learn more about the foundation and be able to support them in some way.
I'm so excited.
Some people will hear your client list, U.S. Open, Cadillac, I think West Elm, Starbucks, and then they hear, art show at the Tampa Edition, and they think that you're like out here with some huge studio, out doing your thing. You talked a little bit about the grind, but can you talk about what that feels like to start taking shred on the internet, as Annalise was talking about, and then it becoming like this really real life thing? But also how the change in your personal life. It's not like a flip switches and all of a sudden you're a 24/7 full-time artist. What has that transition been like, and what is the day-to-day for you like as an artist? And I just always try to give people perspective here.
So picture at the life of an artist. I don't know what you think. Studio covered in paint, the works. I'm not that. Mm-hmm. I'm literally a mom working from my guest room that I convert into a studio. And when I step outside of that room, I step over like Legos and toys and whatnot. So for me, it keeps me humble because I remember that I'm still this other person as well. But my day to day, it's very normal. It's very routine. I drop my kids off. Me and my husband, we drop our kids off at school in the morning. I come home. I decompress. I get into my office, my studio space. I start to illustrate. I do whatever. But then again, I step back out and I step into real life. So if that's a draw for you, I am just a regular person that just has this fortunate opportunity to be able to share what I'm passionate about with people. But super regular over here.
And also, can I interject here again, just to remind our listeners here, we are talking with with artist Melissa Kobe here, who's got a big show going on tonight. Also with Creative Loafing's Annalise, what's your Annalise?
Mabe.
Mabe, thank you, Annalise. I didn't have that in my notes here, so Creative Loafing's Annalise Mabe. We're talking about the show that Melissa Kobe has tonight, and you mentioned a moment ago, Ray, Starbucks, right? So you've been with some high-end companies as well, doing work with like Pottery Barn. No.
So 2020 is such a weird time, but it was actually just very transformative for me because all of the opportunities that I've had have come from this moment, So I got a lot of attention online, and then all these companies started reaching out to me, and one of them was West Elm and Pottery Barn. So I had a line of artwork for Pottery Barn specifically, but I had my regular artwork that's on my Etsy with West Elm. I've had a line of tabletop and other art pieces with World Market. One of my recent collabs was with Cadillac. I created for their F1 series. I did some artwork, a couple murals for them a few weeks ago. I just came back from New York.
Did they give you a Cadillac for that? How's that work?
They did. Wait. Temporarily.
Okay.
I had the most beautiful electric.
Like, yes.
I do want to buy one because it was the best car of my life. I did a lot of work in that vehicle. It was amazing. But yeah, just really, really amazing opportunities. I did my first award ceremony, did the art for it a week ago today. I was in New York presenting my art for an award ceremony for the Fragrance Foundation, which was incredible. So I've had a very fortunate art run.
You're Jamaican born.
Yes.
And you're here from Tampa, and you told Annalise in your story that when you were 6 or 7, you mentioned your little studio, but your uncle also had a little studio in his house, and there were these paintings up there, and he was just painting at home, as you're kind of describing, but he didn't show his work anywhere. But you were really struck, and you remember as a 6 or 7-year-old, just like your kids, are realizing the beauty in your work in this rush of everything. And I know you're feeling it because we see it here in the studio. How much have you been able to think about your uncle? What was his name, and what are some of those feelings that you kind of think about here?
His name is Steve Johnson. I feel it. I'm happy that I'm able to represent my family in this way, but I think about the fact that he never really did anything with his art. I remember seeing him do the most wonderful oil paintings, and it was a different time. It was 20-something years ago, so he probably didn't have the access that I have now. But he never had the opportunity to just present his art to the world. And he works a regular 9 to 5, and so I think of that, and I remember just how I thought that he would be great. And he's a wonderful man, but he never became a famous artist or anything. So I think it makes me just even more proud to be able to say that I took on maybe some of his talents, hopefully, and I'm able to transform that into, a career, a life plan, a life goal, a trajectory. I don't know what you want to call it, but it makes me proud that I'm able to carry on the family art name, I guess.
Is he coming? Have you talked to him about the show?
No, he lives in Jamaica.
Okay, so he won't be
here.
Able to be here. By the way, if you're just tuning in, that's the voice of Melissa Kobe. She's a Tampa-based artist, has done work all over the country, including for the U.S. Open. We just have maybe a minute and a half here. Melissa Annalise Mabe is also here from Creative Loafing, Tampa Bay. I just wanted to ask you, I guess, as we're exiting here, what is next for you after this? I know you're going to decompress after tonight.
I am.
Hopefully you don't go home with a lot of your art, right?
No, this opportunity has made me so excited to continue to strive towards maybe more gallery exhibits. I think the commercial space, I've seen and done a lot of wonderful things, and I really want to dive into this new chapter head first. So I have some plans in mind to get my art into Miami. So send up good jujus or whatever, but that's my next plan.
Nice.
That's awesome. That's the voice of Melissa Kobe. She's a Jamaican-born Tampa artist having her solo debut tonight at the Tampa Edition. That's in Water Street, Tampa. I think there's a VIP hour that starts at 7 p.m. You can go to cltampabay.com to read Annalise Mabe's story about that and see notes about the cost of that show and how accessible it is. We want to thank Melissa and Annalise and Adam for both all coming in here this morning. And, of course, thank you to Maria Scruggs, candidate for St. Pete Mayor. there. That election coming up on August 18th. Mitch, thank you for setting that up.
And Ray, happy Father's Day to you.
Thank
this
you.
weekend.
Yeah, my kid conned me into fishing this morning before I
really?
went to work, so I was having a very hectic morning.
Where'd you do that at?
Overall, underneath the North Boulevard Bridge, and we get to talk about the history of the bridge, and he tries to catch fish. So, yeah, thank you, Mitch. I really appreciate that. We will be back in studio next week. I know we're going to tape some stuff probably for
a couple weeks, the holiday.
July 4th.
Yeah, a couple weeks.
We want to, again,
next week.
Thanks to all the WMNF Tampa listeners who donated 2 weeks ago, who continue to support this station. I want to thank Skip Sassy on the board for us this afternoon, Anthony Madur on the phones. I do see Joel and Shoki in Studio One. Really happy to kind of prime the airwaves for Art in Your Ear with a little bit of art talk. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Annalise. Thank you to all the listeners and supporters of WMNF Tampa. We will see you next Friday.
We'll be here a while.